Hello? Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our workshop tonight. We have two presentations for you. The first one is going to be by Deltona Water staff, and that's going to be Crystal Harris to my right. The second presentation will be from St. Johns River Water Management District, Ms. Deidre Irwin. We appreciate her coming out tonight. What we have for you is two relatively detailed presentations of good information, but what I want to make sure you know is these are going to be available for you to download from the website. We'll have them up on Friday. And we want that information so you can reference it later. So don't feel like you got to scramble and write everything down. They'll be available to you. When you walked in, there was a sign-in sheet, and we had some cards. We just want to make sure everyone's got a chance to get their question in and we answer it. If we have time after, we can do a little open forum depending upon how that works out. We would like to stick on the topics tonight, which are general Deltona Water policy, reading your bill, finding leaks, our policies for credits and whatnot, and then water conservation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Crystal with the first presentation.
Hey, good evening, everyone. And again, thank you guys for coming. I'm going to try to get this through as painless as possible. And then again, St. John's will follow me. So if I'm not speaking up enough or if you can't hear me, please go ahead and stop me and let me know. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So the topics that we're going to cover tonight is just some general information about Deltona Water, about our day-to-day business. We're going to talk about water meter readings. We're going to talk about how to check for leaks, and then understanding your bill and our water rates. Okay, so basically we have 32,000 customers. This is an average number. Most of the numbers that we're going to use tonight are going to be round numbers for the purpose of making it easier to communicate the information. Our customer service division, we have 17 employees. Of that, we currently have 3 cashiers, 5 call center reps, and 3 billing technicians. The 6 administrative/management, that's part of our mailroom processing clerks. We have a dispatcher and things of that nature, so that's not all management, that's our support staff as well. We have a field operations division that has 24 employees. Of those 24 employees, that also includes our meter readers. Our meter readers fall under the field ops versus other utilities. Sometimes they fall under a finance division or something like that. At Deltona Water, I'm sure everybody's familiar with our main location of 255 Enterprise. We actually generate, print, and mail every single bill that we send out to you, every single delinquent notice. So it's all done in-house. We don't third-party anything out. And we'll get to that. We also accept every single form of payment. So most of you are familiar with our payment options, but I wanted to make sure that everybody knows how all of them can be accessed and how they work as far as your account goes. At any time, we have an automated phone system, which we call IVR. But basically, you can call any time of day at no additional charge. If you're calling from the phone number that is listed on your account, it will automatically find your account for you. You can pay as much as you want or as little as you want through our automated system. There are no restrictions on that method. We have customer service reps available, obviously in person and over the phone during normal business hours. Over the phone or in person, you can pay with cash, check, money order, anything. On the IVR system, it's credit card only. We have our online option through our website, which again is credit card only. The one restriction on the online is you have to pay your entire account balance. So if you have a past due bill and you have another bill that is not yet due, you have to pay the entire account balance. We don't have the option at the moment to allow you to just pay a portion of it, nor can you pay over that. Basically, when you go online, you click Manage My Bills, and it's going to automatically populate the amount of the payment for you. We have our regular mail payment where you guys will see the P.O. box. We basically go to the Deltona Boulevard post office every morning. We collect all the mail, we open it, we process it in-house, we scan it, and we send our batches to the bank. We have a drop box outside of our office that looks like an actual post office mailbox. That is checked every afternoon at the close of business, so most days it's 4:30. We process them that day, so when we check it at the close of business, we are processing that before we apply any of those fees and things that we'll get to on your bills. The only automatic payment that we have at the moment is actually through us, and we call it EFT. This is where you provide a voided check to us, we set you up, and we draft it 5 days prior to your due date. We do not have an option for recurring credit card payments at this time. We are looking in the future to be able to offer additional payment options. We also get what we call an electronic payment from a third party such as your bank. Most banks nowadays have their own bill pay service where you can go on, you find us as a vendor, and it allows you to pay your bill. The only downfall that we see to that, and the same goes for if you pay, Walmart will accept your money, Amscot will accept your money. The downfall is we have no contracts with any of those vendors. So we have no control over when we actually receive that payment. We get one batch file a day. We receive it in the afternoon. So there is no way for us to know that that money has truly made it from your bank to our bank until we get a file in the afternoon and we load it into our system. So we always discourage this option. If you are delinquent, please just call us over the phone. There is no charge for you to call us, but that way we're getting your payment right away. We can service your account right away and prevent, future fees or even possible disconnections and things like that. So again, we process all the payments on site at our office. Meter 101. This is going to be a couple of slides, and these slides are a little bit lengthier. They have a lot of content, again, because as Matt mentioned, this is meant for you to be able to print out later on and have as a reference so that you're not having to write all these things down and things like that. I do have some meters up here that everyone is welcome to come and look at. We have them labeled because most of us, yes, until I got into this business, I never knew where my meter was, and I had no interest in going to look at it, to be honest with you. So we have some meters up here that we'll be able to show you and you will be able to look at after the meeting and ask further questions. But basically, our meters are located at what we call the zero property line. So if I'm standing at the street and I'm looking at your house and your neighbor's house, your property line that runs between, that's what we call the zero property line. They're in a black box, which I actually have one here. The reclaim boxes are purple. Some of them look kind of pinkish, but this is what your meter box looks like. The box itself is buried into the ground, and normally they're flush, so it has a cover on it. If you'll notice, one second, I'm going to remove the lid, and you'll see the lid has a metal thing. The box has no bottom to it, okay? This is why there's dirt in the meter boxes, because they actually have no bottom. The dirt is what is supporting your meter in the box. Most boxes have 2 meters. If you do not have an irrigation meter, that box likely contains your meter and your neighbor's meter, okay? And that's why we have serial numbers that would match up to your bill. The serial numbers are written on the meters. If you have an irrigation meter, yes, both of your meters are likely in the same box. That way, we try to keep the services together if we can. So in other words, if you have irrigation, you would see 2 meters in your box, but one would service your house and one would service your irrigation meter. Again, they both would have a serial number on them, so you would be able to determine which one services which item. We have 5 meter readers that are assigned in the city. We do read every single meter every single month, okay? What happens is that we have our customer information system, which they do not have access to, only our office staff does, our customer service reps and technicians do. In the bottom right-hand corner of the slide, you'll see a picture. That is our handheld meter reading device. That is the device that we load what we call their routes into. Their routes are loaded. It basically tells them what address to go to, what the serial number is, and it gives them a sequence of how to read it. So when you have a street and you have 10 houses, the sequence tells them this is house number 1, then you're going to go to house number 2, but obviously they have an address to be able to confirm that. They're not provided the prior reading. So in other words, when I go out there today to read your meter, I do not have your reading from last month. So I cannot sit in my truck and I cannot estimate your reading, okay? Because they're not provided that information. Of course, the office staff has it, but that is not transmitted through the file into the handheld device. So if the device detects a high read, it's going to beep at the meter reader, and it's going to ask them to put the reading back in. It's also going to do the same thing if it's a low read. Like, for instance, we have a few snowbirds that decide to keep their homes open while they're gone. So the first month that they're gone, if they have a 0 usage or a lower than normal usage, it's going to beep at the meter reader. That's a checks and balance that we have to make sure that, 1, our meter readers haven't read it wrong. It's going to ask them to put in that reading again. It's also going to create a flag for the office staff to know that the device basically, I keep referring it to beeping at them in the field, but it's going to create a flag for office staff to then further review when it comes in. In the event that the reading is high and the meter reader sees a need to leave a door tag, they generally will. I'll give you an example. We read a meter one time, and they noticed a really wet area very close to the meter box, but it was under a bush. That turned out to be a leak for the customer. The meter was turning when the meter reader read it. Generally, if the meter's turning, we don't always necessarily leave a door tag because a lot of times they may be at your house at 7:30 in the morning. A lot of us are getting ready for work at 7:30, 7 o'clock, so therefore the meter's likely going to be turning. But in this case, they left a door hanger. The customer was appreciative. They were able to go and get that leak repaired. Obviously, then they followed up with the office staff to, get their courtesy leak adjustment and things like that. But we don't always have the ability to know whether there's truly a leak or not. But that's where the office staff comes in after we download the information. If a meter reader cannot get a reading for some reason, that again gets flagged. They have to enter a reason as to why they can't get one. A few of the common reasons would be somebody may have parked their car over the meter box, not necessarily knowing because a lot of times they're in the right-of-way area. Some meter boxes, they may have a dog out in the yard that we just, can't get into because although they allow us access into the gate because it's still within the utility easement, we may not be able to get to it. Sometimes there are bees. Sometimes there are ants. We have to take care of that problem before we can go back and get a reading. In any event, they cannot just skip over this meter without entering a code. They have certain codes built in that they have to enter. When we get that information back to the office, it automatically flags it, and the office staff will handle that, and they'll create a service order for another technician or someone to go back out to get a reading. And usually we can get the readings within 1 to 2 business days, because if they come in today, service orders are created, we go out tomorrow to get a reading. So again, all the billings would be on actual meter readings and not estimations. So I have a few pictures here of the different things that you will likely see in case you have not seen them. The one at the top left, again, that's the meter box like I have here. This is, again, your standard potable water meter box. The picture in the middle, you can see the serial number. The serial number's in 2 places. It's on that black cover. Sometimes the covers are missing, but it is also etched into the brass of the meter. The purple box at the top right, again, that's your reclaim meter box. That indicates that only a reclaim meter is going to be in that box. You will not see a potable meter in that box because they cannot be cross-connected. This picture down here talks about the 0 property line. You see the 2 houses and the meter box, and this one actually has a backflow device out in front of it. This is what your meter actually looks like. This is a Neptune meter. The majority of our meters within the city are Neptunes. That's the brand of the meter. You read it just like you would a car. So we actually have a video I'm going to show you in a minute, but just real quick. You have your flow indicator and your needle. We read in 10-gallon increments. So you would read the register just like you do an odometer on the car, from left to right, including this is a fixed 0 on the end. You would include that in your reading. So this particular example shows that it has 10 gallons on it. When the needle goes around to the 1, that would be 11 gallons. So we read, again, just the register because we read in 10-gallon increments. But you as a resident can get down 1 more level if you prefer to, and you can get to the individual gallon. Obviously, we're going to catch the rest of those individual gallons the next month that we read because it will flip. Every time it makes 1 complete circle, it's going to flip the 1 digit on the register. Okay, and we have a quick video, if Wendy could play it. This is going to be an example of how to read your meter. And 1 second, Wendy, if you don't mind. Just to let everyone know, some of you may have seen this before. We gave this same video about a year ago. I did a presentation to the commission at that time, and this video was in here. I know we've had a lot of concerns about dirt being in the meter boxes. This video was created a year ago for the commission at that time to give a similar presentation. So I just wanted to show that because we're clearly going to see what we have to do to read the meters. Okay, Wendy? Oops. Sorry. Did I do that? Or...
Now, when you look in the water meter box on your property, this is typically what you're going to see. You'll find 2 meters. One meter is for your house. The other meter is for your neighbor. That's why it's important to read the serial number and make sure it matches the serial number that's on your account. And this is the box that has your water meter. Typically, it's going to be right on the property line. Now, when you open it up, you need to be careful to make sure that you don't have any critters in there, such as snakes, ants, bees. So lift the lid up, I said carefully, and this is what you'll see, a lot of dirt. Just brush the dirt away. You'll see on the lid cover the serial number for the meter. This is the same number that you'll find on your account. You lift the lid up, brush away the dirt. There's your leak indicator, the register that shows how much water has been used, and there's the indicator arrow. As you can tell, no water is going through this meter because it's not moving. The arrow's not moving, the triangle's not moving, and you don't see any movement with the register. But once the water does start going through the meter, you can see that the triangle is moving, the arrow is moving, just by using your water hose.
Okay, and as we continue on to talk about leaks and stuff, I'm going to refer to it as a little triangle, which was on the left-hand side of the meter, or what we call the flow indicator. That's going to be your first line of defense when checking for leaks, is to be looking in that area. So there are several ways that residents themselves can check for leaks before calling in for a professional to come out and take a look. Our office staff can go over some of these items with you in depth. If you need some additional assistance, we also have stuff on our website. So the first thing that you want to do when you're checking for leaks is you want to make sure that everything in your home is turned off, and you're going to go out to your meter and check to see if the leak indicator or the flow indicator is moving at all. If it is moving and you have turned everything off, this means your toilets aren't filling up at the moment, you don't have a load of laundry going, your ice machine is not filling up the tray. All those things would need to be off before we go ahead and do this. So if it is moving, that is an indication of a leak. There's one more step that you can take by turning off your house valve at that point and see if it's still moving. If you turn off your house valve, if your house valve is working, just because you have one doesn't mean that they all work, because a lot of times they're installed, we never have to use them, so sometimes they fail as well. But if it works and the meter is still turning, that indicates that the leak is between your meter and that house valve, so basically in your main line going to your home. If it stops, then that indicates that the leak is somewhere within the home itself. We ask you to basically do a 2-hour leak check. When you call our office with a high bill, we're going to ask you to go ahead and perform a 2-hour leak check and to get readings for us and then call us back. So performing a 2-hour leak check, that's basically, again, not using any water for 2 hours. That means not flushing a toilet, not doing any laundry, no dishes, no nothing. We're going to have you take a start reading, wait 2 hours, and then go back out and take another reading. This is a fairly easy test to do. It's not a end-all be-all, because sometimes if you have a leaking toilet, it's not going to show necessarily in those 2 hours. Toilets are kind of a funny thing to catch for leaks. The easiest way is to take the top of your tank off, the lid off of your tank, put some food coloring in there, wait about 5 to 10 minutes, and then see if the water in the bowl is then the same color as that food coloring. The problem with it is that sometimes your flapper, which generally costs $1 to $3, it may work intermittently. So when you flush the toilet this time, it may sit down and seal perfectly fine, but then the next time, it may leak. So I recommend doing that more than just once. If you only do it once, I don't feel that you're doing it, to estimate enough tests to see if it's truly leaking, because we may flush our toilet 3-4 times a day, if we're at work and not home, but it's not a good indication if you only do it once. Again, that's a fairly simple, fairly easy test that does not cost much. From time to time, we even have some tablets at the office that you can put in the tank, which is really no different than the food coloring, but most people have food coloring, available at the home, so they don't even have to come see us. Check your water hoses. A lot of times we see with water hoses, the spigot itself is dripping down the wall. That water adds up. The other thing that we'll see is we'll have somebody who will have a nozzle on the end of their hose, but they actually leave the hose on the entire time. So although it's not always dripping, hoses can break and those nozzles can break. We've actually seen where a customer they went on vacation and they had left their water on, but it was, perfectly fine in their opinion. They came home and their hose had actually dry rotted and broke. So they had a pretty nasty water leak at that point. Your irrigation system, I'm going to touch on this briefly. St. John's is going to get a little bit more in depth as far as irrigation and conservation and things like that. But basically, checking your irrigation system is not always going to work when you just go to your meter and look for that flow indicator. The reason being is your system is not on. To check your irrigation system, we have to go a little bit further and actually run your system. And there's a couple different ways. There's many different ways to do it, which I know St. John's will get into a little bit more. I'm going to go over one, and we have a second as an example. But basically, you can't just check your irrigation system by going to the meter. I also don't recommend saying that, I know what my irrigation system runs. We have a lot of power surges here in Florida. We've had systems that they thought it was set for 2 days a week. They come home and find out it's running every day. But it's coming on at 2 in the morning, so they're not realizing that because most people are asleep during that time. Water softeners is another culprit that we see a lot. A lot of times they can keep cycling. So they're doing more water. They're dumping the water versus doing the actual job. Again, a lot of this information can be found on our website or by calling our office. We're happy to discuss how to do these things in depth with you. So here's just a representation of how water can add up. So on the right-hand side is a diagram. I know it's a little bit harder to read. But for instance, the first dot on there says 185 gallons per day is lost at that size of a hole, for a leak. So there's many charts out there that are like this. They all vary based on pressure and things like that. But I wanted to show this just for an example of how something so simple, and if you look, at the bottom two, that's about the size of a water hose. So if you're looking at that 36,000 gallons per day, again, there's a whole lot of other things that go into it, such as pressure and things like that. But it just kind of gives you a visual of what something so small and simple can do. All right, so as I mentioned, I'm going to go through one way of checking how much your irrigation system uses, because I find this to be a hot topic as well. So what you want to do is you want to run each zone one at a time, and we're going to basically run it for a minute. So I have a picture of the meter on the right-hand side. You go ahead and you turn on your first zone. You're going to come back to your meter, and you're going to wait till the red needle gets down to 0, so that way you can have a start reading. You're going to go ahead and take that start reading, and you're going to set your timer. So use your phone or whatnot. You let the time run for 1 minute. At the end of the minute, you're going to look at your meter again, and you're going to write down the reading. But again, I mentioned you as a customer can go one step further. Other than just reading the register, you're going to annotate where the actual needle is at. So I'm going to give an example on the next slide of running it and having the reading now say 26. And I actually have a meter up here that is on 26, so that if you want to visually see it after, you're welcome to come and look at it. So again, you write down your start reading after it has gone to 0 so that you have a fresh start reading. Let it run for a minute, and then we're going to take the reading. Then you're going to go turn off zone 1, and you're going to start with zone 2, and you're going to basically repeat this process for each zone. It's okay if you can't get back to your meter in time to catch it on the 30 or the next one. You simply wait until it gets back to the 0, and start your reading, because you're going to have, that's your actual reading you're going to start with. So you have basically as much time as you need to get there, because you're controlling when you're taking your readings. You're taking them for a minute. So here's an example of what this reading is going to tell us. Again, for my example, for zone 1, we turned it on. The start reading in this case was 10. My end reading was 26. So my register would have been showing 20, and my needle would have been on the 6. So that means that 16 gallons went through in that 1 minute time span. So now I'm going to factor that out by how many times or how long I run that zone for, how many times a day that I run my system, and then how many times per week I run my system. So it's just simple math that we do, on a daily basis. So we have the 16 gallons per minute. Let's say I run my zone for 25 minutes. It's going to equal out to 400 gallons per zone. So again, we finished with all of our additional zones doing the same exact thing. So I've kind of put this chart together. These are just generic readings that I've put to kind of show you the flow of things and how this all calculates out. Your gallons per minute are obviously going to vary. Not every zone that you have is set up the same. There's different types of heads. They're covering different types of areas. You got bubblers or drips and rotors. So you're going to have different numbers here. So you can see I went from 10 to 26. I let it get back to 0, so I started at 30, and I went to 42, which is 12 gallons. I let it get back to 0, which is 50, and went to 61. So when you calculate all this out, every time I run my sprinkler system, I'm using 2,125 gallons. And so this is what we ask you to do to know truly what your irrigation system is doing. So if we take that 2125, and let's say I run it, 2 times a day, 2 times a day, 2 days per week for the 4 weeks, it equates to 34,000 gallons a month. So this is just one way of doing it. Again, these are just numbers. A lot of times you won't have all your zones on for the same amount of time. If one's smaller than the other one, or depending on your heads, you may not need to have them on. For this example, I just left all the zones at the same amount of time, and then showed the difference in the readings. So another method is, if you don't want to go out into the yard, you can do kind of more of just a calculation method. If you know what you have as far as sprinkler heads and zones and things like that, you can actually do it without going out there and taking readings. You would just take, generally the rotor heads are 3 gallons per minute, so you would find out how many of them that you have. Again, the same multiplication that you kind of did in the previous example, multiplying them by the time that you're running them, the amount of zones, getting your monthly usage by factoring all those things out. So this is going to be in the presentation. St. John's, again, is going to add some more. There's also a tuna can test that you can do. But basically, every irrigation system is unique. So saying that your neighbors is doing one thing, you really need to just rely on your own system, your own data, because every yard, every spray head is unique and different. Okay, everybody, your neighbor may have a clogged head, you may not. They may have a broken head, or they may have 2 rotors where you have a bubbler. So you really need to do your own test, find out what your own system is doing, and go off of that. We had a lady who recently bought a house, and we noticed a high bill on a previous customer who was leaving. He said, nothing was wrong. So we went ahead and asked her to proactively check her irrigation system. Come to find out, it was set to run every single day, and one of her zones actually did not turn off. So she had to physically, even though her power was off on her system, the valve itself on that zone was not working. So she had to physically go and manually turn that valve off on that zone to get it to turn off. So again, she had to go and check her system and not just go off of what the last person said, that everything at the home was working fine. Okay, so some of your options that we have, which many of you guys may be familiar if you've had high bills or you've contacted us. So when you do your 2-hour leak check, again, we're going to want those readings, because that's also an opportunity for us to see how much water you have used since the last reading that we have on file. So it helps us as well. So call us with a 2-hour leak check. if we've done that and we still haven't figured anything out, if you weren't able to find anything, we do offer a courtesy field accuracy test. Excuse me. So what that is one of our technicians will come out and they'll bring a meter. It will basically, the easiest way to explain it is that when we run 10 gallons through your meter, it should also register 10 gallons on our meter. This can only be done if you have a properly working hose bib in close proximity to the meter. So in other words, if your meter's on the left-hand side of your house, we generally need a hose bib on the left-hand side of your house so that the hose, we have to hook up a garden hose to make this test run. When you hook up your hose, if it drips at all by the spigot itself, we actually can't perform that test because we can't have that leaking. So then the next step would be a bench test, which is a machine that we have at our office that allows us to test it at 3 different flow rates. As far as from a customer standpoint, we have 3 options that are currently available that we've added in the last couple of years. We have the courtesy adjustment, a leak adjustment, and a pool fill adjustment. And I'm going to go over those a little bit now. And again, this is something that our office staff, this one's a little bit harder to read because, again, it's a lot of content because we wanted to ensure that you guys had this for future reference. But again, our office staff is happy to discuss it with you. So the general requirements for all 3 of those types of adjustments that I just referenced is that you must have 6 consecutive months of usage. We want to base this off of you as a customer and not off of somebody else that used to live there. If you are a new customer and you experience a high bill, you still have to submit within the first 30 days in writing, but we will actually hold your adjustment until you have 6 months of usage outside of that high bill. So we can set up payment plans and things like that to help you with that high bill until we can get to the point where you have 6 months of usage. The reason being is that no family is alike, no customer is alike. The person who used to live there before may have had 2 people, where now you're a family of 5. You know, there's a difference between ages of people. We all shower differently. We all have different loads of laundry. We're all unique in our own way, so we don't want to compare you to anyone else. We also can't compare you to your previous address. If you were living in a home that was 30 years old and now you just bought a brand new home, those fixtures are going to be different. There's going to be more potentially high efficiency fixtures in your new home that you may not have had in your old home. So we definitely want to compare you and your current situation, and that's why we have the payment plans and things like that to help out. So again, the request must be received by our staff in writing within 30 days of the first bill date. Submission of the request doesn't guarantee that it's going to be approved. We have certain requirements. If you have a leak, we need to know that you truly fixed it, okay? Because if you have a leak and you choose not to fix it, what's going to happen? You're going to continue to get high bills. That's not the point of a leak adjustment. We want you to be encouraged to fix it. We understand sometimes there's situations where you know you have something going on, but you just can't pinpoint it. We know sometimes that there's a time lapse between landlords and renters. Sometimes that process takes a little bit longer because you have to go through someone else to get someone else, to come and check things out. So we understand that, but that's where the conversation needs to take place with our staff. Also, submitting the adjustment does not preclude you from paying your bill on time. Again, it's not a guarantee adjustment, but we have payment plans available. So if your adjustment is under review and you're due tomorrow, if you don't want to get any other fees, go ahead and do a payment plan with us. If your adjustments get processed, we're going to cancel that payment plan, and we're still going to give you the same amount of adjustment that we would have had you not set up the payment plan. So it's there for you to use, and we're happy to do that for you. We generally say it takes about 7 to 10 business days once we have all the information back. We want a reading from you after you make your repair. Again, that tells us, okay, here was your high reading. This is where you're at. We can kind of see, make sure that you've completed the repair. So the first one is the courtesy leak adjustment. With this, again, you have to actually have a high usage. And I don't want to say a high bill because a lot of what we're going to get into later is that we need to talk gallons because we're on a tiered structure. So when we talk gallons, you have to have an increase in your usage. And sometimes with a leak, you may not know you have it until you get your first high bill. So with a leak adjustment, we do offer sometimes up to 2 consecutive bills to be adjusted. Again, the request must be In writing, it has to include the address, obviously your service address. We need to know what was broken, and we need to know how you repaired it. We strongly encourage you to go ahead and give us a copy of that receipt from Lowe's or Ace or to the plumber who repaired it. That's just one more indication that, yes, you had that leak repaired. We understand that we have a lot of people who can do it themselves. You can go to Ace or Lowe's and buy a couple dollar coupling and be able to repair the small leak that you may have had. There's other situations where a licensed plumber isn't going to be needed. You have something under your slab or things like that, or you may not be in the condition or may not know anything about pipes. So in any event, we just want to see that you have truly done something, okay? So I gave a little example at the bottom. Basically, hey, my name is so-and-so, I live at this address. The main pipe from my meter to my house was broken. I went to the hardware store and I bought a coupling, and here's my receipt. We even have some people that send us pictures. We don't require you to send us pictures, but hey, if you feel up to it, you're welcome to do so, especially because we can accept these via email. So the other adjustment, let me back up 1 second. On the leak adjustment, you are eligible for this once in a 12-month period. So you can get a leak adjustment once every 12 months. So if it happens today here in July, you'll be eligible basically 12 months from now for another leak adjustment. And again, that's 2 consecutive bills on the leak adjustment. We have a courtesy adjustment. Some people use this for a variety of things. This you're only eligible for once every 24 months. I'll give you some examples. We had a high bill because we laid new sod. This is the one time we're going to lay sod in the next 3 years, so we go ahead and we want to use this courtesy adjustment. These adjustments do not wipe away your bill, but when I get into our tiered structures, you'll see how these adjustments help because it's taking some of that higher usage out of that highest tier that we have and putting it at our adjusted rate. So there's different reasons for high bills. You may have had, a leak like in a toilet, but we just can't identify it, and it only happened one time. So here's an option for you to use as an adjustment. For those customers that are on sewer and have a pool, we have an annual, again, 12-month option for a courtesy pool fill adjustment. In other words, you call us and you say, hey, I had to drain my pool because I had a leak in my side and I need to refill it. We're going to ask you, in most cases, for a start and an end reading while you're actually filling so that we know how much is going in. What the courtesy pool fill adjustment does for those sewer customers, we still charge you for the water because it's still going into your pool, but we're not going to charge you the sewer portion on that water. Your sewer portion is going to be based on your normal average because we're not filling our pools every month, significantly. Yes, we may top things off here and there, but that's not generally going to be the same as a 10 to 15,000 gallon pool fill when your household usage may average between 3,000 to 5,000 gallons. Okay, so our tiered water rate structure. This is the one thing that I find that most customers may not know that we have or may not understand. We do send out the rate notices every year when they increase. But I've only focused on the inside city limit rates just for the purpose of this explanation to try to make it a little bit easier. But like most utilities nowadays, we have what's called a tiered rate structure, and you'll see it on the left-hand side of the screen. So we have 4 different ranges. Your first tier is 0 to 5,000 gallons. So that means the first 5,000 gallons that passes through your meter, we're going to charge you $1.64 per 1,000 gallons. The next 5,000 that passes through your meter will be at the $3.29. And then as you can see, so forth. You can see a lot of the difference that we found is once you get to the 20,000 gallon mark, you can see it goes up. This is part of a conservation effort. So we talk about, trying to keep our bills lower and things like this. In the next slide, I'll go over the sewer. But I did a few examples over here so that you can see 5,000 gallons is this amount. 7,500, I broke down how each tier is actually calculated for the total amount. Same thing with 6,000, and I just picked a random 11,300 number. We actually have rate calculators on our website that you guys can use. You go in and you put the gallons in, and it's going to do these calculations for you so you can kind of play around and say, hey, if I used $5,000 in my house and $15,000 on my lawn, what is my bill going to look like? Again, this is not showing base charges. So these charges here, this $8.20 is going to be in addition to your base charge. The standard meter is the 5/8 by 3/4 inch meter. I want to say it's $11.72. I have my rate sheet, but I want to say it's $11.72 or somewhere around that range. So you're going to have the $8 plus the $11.72. We have a base charge for sewer as well. And then here's the sewer tiered structure. So on the sewer, we only have 2 tiers. We actually cap our sewer charge at 10,000 gallons. So let's say you were a family who truly used 15,000 gallons. You don't have a separate irrigation meter. We're going to charge you for 10,000 of that. So these are our rates, and these rates are also posted on our website. We actually have rate sheets going back multiple years so that you can see them. If you go to the Deltona website under the water department, you'll see these rates. So again, I've done these same examples that I did on the water, you'll see on the sewer. It just basically shows you how each tier is calculated and then what the end result would be. And again, over 10,000 gallons, we don't charge anything additional for that. That is our cap. Most utilities also have caps. So the billing basics that we do, as I mentioned, we bill customers every single month. We bill on actual usage because we're getting those actual readings. We're not estimating any bills. The only time, which I've been here several years, I do not recall the time where we actually had to estimate bills. Even during FAY, we went out there and we read the meters. Maybe not on the exact day, but a day later, once the storm passed, we were out there reading meters. But in the event of a natural disaster, if we have a tornado go through a certain area, we obviously may not be able to be reading those meters, and we would deal with it in that aspect. And at that time, we may have to estimate those customers, but there's not many cases where we would have to actually estimate a bill. I mentioned when our meter readers are out there reading, the system beeps at them. We review these reports because we review all the usage, but it creates what I call flags on the account. So we will look through the usage, and we have some criteria that we look at. I'm just going to give some brief examples. If I'm normally at 3,000 gallons a month, and my bill this month, or my usage this month, comes in at 15,000 gallons, they're going to look back through my history and say, okay, does Crystal use this amount at any other time throughout the year? Because maybe there's a pattern. Maybe I fill my pool every March. So if they go back to March or July and see that I have a large amount, we may not send out for a reread because it may be a pattern on my account. If there's not a pattern, then we are likely going to send out a reread. What that is when we're reviewing our usage, we're like, that kind of looks high, or hey, that might look low, or maybe there's a zero usage. We're going to send a technician out or a meter reader out to say, go get me another reading. I want to double check that. In most cases, the reading is accurate. We are human. I'm not going to stand here before anyone and say that we don't ever make a mistake. But in most cases, those mistakes are found before it even affects you as a customer because we do these rereads. Our meter readers, they're very good. We have some of them that have been working here since before it became a city. But again, we still make them go and get additional readings if we see high usage, low usage, or anything that looks out of the ordinary. We try. We have 32,000 accounts. We're not going to catch everything, but we do try. Bill cycle normally ranges anywhere from 28 to 38 days on average. We only read Monday through Friday, and because we have to read every meter, we're obviously not going to read your meter on the same day every month. We do have a schedule built where we know what day we're supposed to read your meter for the entire year. We build that schedule prior to the year starting. So if you call me as a customer, I could technically sit here and tell you every day that I'm likely going to read your meter. When we read your meters, the devices capture the individual meter reader, who's doing it. I know specifically who is reading your meter. It tells me what time they've been to your meter. I can tell if they have how much time they've had since the last meter was read. So if I have a street and I'm at the end of the street and I have to go to another one, and if it takes them 1 minute to get to that next street, all that information is contained. It's automatically tracked when they are putting in that stuff. So there's no way, again, for them to estimate We know exactly what they're doing. We know exactly who did it. So we can see that information. All bills are due 20 days from the bill date. If a payment is not received by close of business on the due date, the late fee of $4.01.5% is added. This is shown on your bill, and I'm going to have some examples of the bills on the next couple of screens, so I'll touch back on this. And then if we don't receive your payment on the due date, we're basically going to send you out a physical delinquent notice, which is printed on the blue paper the following Monday. The only time that shifts is if we have a holiday. Obviously if we're not here on Monday, we'll generally send it out the Tuesday. So at the bottom of the screen, I've kind of given an actual example of a bill cycle. So these are actual dates for some of our customers. You'll see the bill date in this case is June 13th. It's due on July 3rd, so that's 20 days. If we don't receive your payment for that bill by the close of business, and you have a bill balance or an account balance of $10 or more, we're going to charge you the late fee of the $4 plus 1.5%. If it's an oversight and you haven't paid us, again, we're going to send a delinquent notice out the following Monday. So in this case, it was the 10th. At this point, the bill was generated 27 days ago, and you're now 7 days late at this point that the delinquent notice is sent out. The delinquent notice looks similar to the bill, and it's going to tell you, hey, if you don't pay by such and such date, which is the 17th, you're going to get a non-payment fee and you're going to be scheduled for disconnection. This date is also listed on your initial bill, and it projects the amount that if you don't pay, this is going to be your bill plus your late fee plus the non-payment fee. So by this point, you're getting ready to be disconnected. Okay, this is it. We're charging this fee and we're coming out to disconnect your services. So at this point, you've had 34 days since the bill was generated, and you're 14 days late from the due date. Okay? So, talking about our bill, and when I was talking about all these dates. So in this case, this customer does not have a past due balance. This was actually a regular bill, and I just removed the address from it I removed all the pertinent information, so to speak, as account numbers to show it. But this is an actual customer's bill with their actual usage, and it goes with the example I was giving. So you can see they don't have any unpaid balance. This is due immediately. So if you have a balance up here, you need to make sure that you're contacting us and making that payment to avoid any further fees in disconnection. Because if this amount up here is $30 or greater, you're likely going to be disconnected before this is due, before your new bill is due. Okay, so you need to call us immediately. That's why that is there. In this case, this customer is paid current. The bill date is June 13th, just like I had on my example, and their amount is the $88.79. Again, it's due on July 3rd, same amount, $88.79, because there's nothing up here. So if they don't pay the $88.79 by close of business on the 3rd, which it tells you process after 4:30 on the 3rd, it's going to be $94.13. This is the $4 plus 1.5%. If they fail to pay it again, we're going to go ahead and send you a delinquent notice. If you do not pay by the date listed on the delinquent notice, which is going to match this date here by close of business on the 17th, this is how much you're going to need to pay. This includes the non-payment fee. Okay, so this is laying it out for you. It's saying, hey, it's $88 to begin with. The late fee brings you up to, I'm using round numbers again, brings you up to $94. But if we don't receive your payment, we've sent out that delinquent notice, we're at the stage of disconnection, and that's where the non-payment is coming on and bringing you to the $156. So this timeline kind of lays it out for you. The middle portion of your bill, when I talked about that service period, that was up here. So this tells you when the usage actually took place. This is something else that we often have to point out to the customers, because we tend to forget that we don't bill until after the fact. We obviously can't bill you for usage you haven't used yet. So a lot of times, by the time you're getting this bill, this one was what, the 13th? Let me go back one slide. So in this case, the bill date is the 13th, but your usage stopped on June 2nd. So June 3rd is going to be on your next bill, okay? So a lot of times when we talk about, well, when did you shut your irrigation system off, we got to remember that this was actually 2 weeks ago, close to that at this point. Your bill number is always going to be unique to that particular bill. The main area here is going to show the services that are at your location. Your meter number, in this case, this is a water and a sewer customer, and here's the meter serial number. If there was irrigation, you would see 2 more lines. You would see an irrigation base and irrigation usage. You would see another meter number, and you would see the readings on that. And then this right here is calculating how much usage. So this person used 3,600 gallons, 3,610. And then it tells you your charges. Again, your base charge is going to be the same every month. Your usage is what's going to fluctuate. So simple down here, it calculates your total for you. This right here is your usage history. What we're comparing is we're taking your usage from this month, and we're comparing it to last month. But we're also comparing it to the usage that you had this month last year. Remember how I said a lot of people have patterns. I fill my pool the same month, or relatively around the same month every year. So that's why you can kind of compare, well, what did I use a year ago? I'm pretty close. So in this case, I wouldn't be too alarmed between that, because what is that about? Was that 4,300? So it's not that much of a difference. It's not like last year was, only 1,000 gallons. Well, it's a lower usage, so it's kind of hard. Like, if my current month was 15,000 gallons and my last year was only 3,000 and I hadn't done anything, that's when it would be an area of concern. So this is a lower usage, so it's a little bit harder to explain how this would be of assistance. The bottom portion of your bill is self-explanatory. This is your stub. This is what you tear off and send in with your mail payment. Or if you bring it into the office, it helps us basically locate your account a little bit faster. Okay, and we're gonna hold off on the questions till we have St. John's go through, and then we have some of the cards, and we will get to all those in a minute. Okay, ready? We can always bring the slides back up if we need to. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I'm Deirdre Irwin. I'm the Water Conservation Coordinator for the St. John's River Water Management District. And I'm going to go over what we have learned and what working with utilities throughout our district, best ways of saving water indoors and out. So I'll give you a little bit of background. There are 5 water management districts in Florida. We have multiple goals and mission statements. I think I have. Here in our district, we have all are part of 18 counties. We stretch from the Georgia state line down to Indian River County, west to Ocala and Gainesville. So our function is regulating water use in this region. It's the hydrologic boundary of the St. John's River. So we oversee how water is taken out of the aquifer. We are in charge of issuing permits, making sure it's used as conservatively as possible. And then we have other roles with wetlands and several other functions, land management, land protection also. So about 90% of water use in Florida is coming from our Floridan aquifer. Here in Deltona, it's exclusively from the aquifer. We're not taking water from lakes or rivers in this area. It's all coming from that Floridan aquifer. This is a very new slide. It shows we've just gathered all of our data from all of our utilities, showing how much water is being used by everyone in our district. We issue permits to agriculture, to cities, to utilities, to industry, and this is how it breaks out. So public water supply or public supply uses the vast amount of water, of all the water that we allocate or permit within our agency. The next group is agriculture, and it's interesting year by year. This can be ag and public water supply can be the exact same, but if we've had a wet year, agriculture isn't using as much water. and they don't need to irrigate the crops. So for last year, this was public water supply was 49% of all the water used in our agency. Commercial is a small group, so it's usually ag and public water supply are the big users. For the residential water use, this is on average what information gathered by the EPA. Florida was included in this study, actually. Jacksonville and Tampa were built into this study. If you have an in-ground irrigation system, an automatic irrigation system, more than half of your water is being used outdoors. That's where the water is being used, not inside the home. Inside the home is typically the top 3 users are toilets, clothes washers, and showers. In the last year, actually, we've seen a bit of a flip. Clothes washers were always second. Now that we're all buying these high-efficiency front-loading washers, clothes washers are dropping down. Showering has become the second highest water use in the home. And then it's multiple users. What a lot of people are surprised at is dishwashers. Dishwashers are really efficient. So make sure you use your dishwasher, you fill it up, and you can save a lot of water right there. And I'll go into, in more detail, all the options for the indoors. Another function of the district is to make sure that we have sufficient water supply for all of our cities and counties moving down in future decades. So we look out to 20-year horizon and develop these plans to make sure that you guys here in Deltona will have adequate water supply. So you're in our Central Springs and East Coast district, and we're getting ready to do a whole bunch of outreach and education and developing our next water supply plan for this region. We're going to look at how many people are moving here and where are we going to get the water from to make sure we have enough, because that's becoming more of a critical issue within our district, especially in Central Florida, as we take water from the aquifer. On our website, there's a whole bunch of pages about water conservation tips. I also brought some brochures over there, and I have business cards if you're welcome to call me at any time. So outdoors then, we often exceed what we would have expected, and I think the presentation was really helpful to explain how much water we use. We usually have no idea how much an irrigation system can use, and the method that you explained for turning on and off each zone and checking your meter is probably the most accurate thing you could do to figure out how much. We have seen homeowners use 500,000 gallons on their irrigation system in a month, because they didn't understand how it was programmed. How many of you have an in-ground irrigation system? Okay, so several. So I didn't want to bore you to tears with details of irrigation if you didn't have one. So again, another benefit, other than not wanting to pay for the water, is you will have a much healthier landscape if you don't overwater it. It means you don't have to put on pesticides or herbicides to deal with fungal issues. So minimal watering is the desired. Remember, it's meant to be supplemental to rainfall, not meant to replace rainfall. Then also the landscape plants that you use should be site appropriate. We won't get into a lot of detail on this tonight. And making sure that they don't need much water. Why put something in the ground that has to be watered every other day? So put in plants that are appropriate to the location in which you live. Here in Deltona, that means drought-tolerant species, high, dry, sandy things. Very few of you live in low-lying area here in Deltona. So we have a database on our website that I'll show you in a minute that can help you find plants that work best in your area. We have another program called WaterStar that I oversee, which is working with builders and homeowners to build water-efficient homes and getting them actually certified with a plaque and making sure they meet this pretty high standard. So we work with builders all over the district to make sure that they're educated on how to build homes that don't use a lot of water in the first place. In that program, we look at landscaping, irrigation, and indoors. So again, site-appropriate plants. We try to, in the WaterStar program, and as a tip for you all, reduce the amount of irrigated turf grass. Now, here in Volusia County, you have a code for all new homes have to be built to a certain standard for irrigation, and it's a pretty strict code, actually. It was one of the first in the state to develop such a code. I think Sarasota, then Volusia County, and they restrict how much irrigated turf grass. The less turf grass you have, the less water you're going to use, because your beds don't need as much irrigated water. Shade, increasing shade in your yard reduces how much water the turf grass needs also. And then, if possible, preserve existing vegetation. This is mainly for builders. You don't have that option. So again, too much irrigated turf and poor plant choices also often result in overwatering and plants that don't look healthy, and the only solution is to sometimes continue to overwater. So we developed this WaterWise plant database, and I brought brochures about it, where you can plug in your landscape situation, where you're located, sun, shade, what part of the state you're in, whether you're looking to learn about shrubs, ground cover, annuals, and it will tell you which species are good for your landscape. This is the questions that it will ask you. I know you can't see it real well there. The light range, salt tolerance, whether you want something that grows fast or slow. It's a lot of criteria. I suggest you put in the bare minimum. The more boxes you fill, the shorter the list of species that you'll get. And then you put in a list, certain criteria, you end up with this list of species and all this information. You can click on any one of these and you'll get a one-page sheet all about that plant. So if you find one you like, you're going to Lowe's or Ace or Home Depot or whatever, you can print this out and bring it with you so you can locate it if you're planning to do landscaping in your yard. Turf grass is usually the trouble area. As I said, reducing turf grass reduces water use. I get calls. I get a lot of the irrigation calls at the district, and I've had calls from people who've just moved to Florida, and they would like the name of the turf grass species that doesn't have weeds, doesn't need much water, has perfect coverage all year, and is soft to walk on. And I just usually start laughing. It doesn't exist. Naturally, in a natural environment in Florida, there isn't really a turf grass species. This isn't like New Jersey or New England, where grass just grows and it's soft and it just rains and it greens up. It's tough growing turf grass in Florida. So we have certain species we use over and over. They all have their pros and cons. Really, the only drought-tolerant turf grass in Florida is Bahia. And it's not everybody's favorite turf grass. It's got with this rainfall, it's got the seed pods, but it's the only one that will survive in the absence of rainfall or irrigation. But again, I have some Bahia in my yard. It's not the most attractive, especially in dry weather. Your local extension service is your best friend to help you choose what's appropriate to your area. Here in Volusia, it's on State Road 44 and I-4, the extension by the fairgrounds. The horticultural agent is Joe Swords. He's awesome. They have a garden there. They've just renovated it where you can walk through and get ideas. They've converted turf grass areas to ground cover and bromeliads. It's beautiful. You should go visit to get ideas for what you can do in the landscape. This is a brand new table put out by the University of Florida showing the different conditions that suit different types of turf grass. And there's, again, no perfect species. Here in, I would say probably Bahia is a good one. St. Augustine is really common, but there's a lot of issues with St. Augustine. With pests, you've got to water it. The new one, that relatively new, is zoysia. Are you hearing a lot about zoysia in this area? It's a really aggressive turf grass. The University of Florida has their own test plots, and they do all sorts of research on grass. I didn't trust them, so I developed my own turf grass test plots in my backyard. So I have zoysia, Bahia, and St. Augustine. I wanted to see which grew best. And I was very suspect of zoysia in the beginning. It's practically growing up the sides of my house, and I don't hardly ever water. So it takes 6 months to a year to establish it. You can put in plugs which is a lot cheaper, but boy, does it spread. But you just got to give it time. I know some people who had really patchy St. Augustine, and it's a lot of money to rip it out, haul it away. They actually plugged all the gaps with zoysia. The zoysia took over completely. So that's kind of a cheap option if you're having turfgrass issues. But you can look at all these criteria. You'll get a copy of this to determine which is best for your situation. Irrigation then. Number one thing you should do, and I think you learned about how ways of doing that tonight, is get rid of leaks. Every system leaks. You don't always see the leak, but they all leak. If you're on any kind of a hill, every time you turn your system off, the heads at the bottom of the lowest area leak out all the water in that pipe every single time. There is a thing called a check valve you can put in. It's really cheap that will prevent that, but systems leak. We inspect new houses, and there's always one head that's leaking. If you have micro irrigation under the mulch, it's often leaking. So that test with your meter is the absolute best way to do it. So after leaks, you make sure, and this is a lot of technical terms, but I'll explain them. Precipitation rate matched to the plant water requirement. That means the type of head you have to put out water is matched to the type of plant material. So for turfgrass, it's rotors and sprays. For your beds where your shrubs are, micro irrigation, micro sprays or drip tubing is the best option. Even distribution within the turf zone. Getting the water out as evenly as possible, and I'll tell you how you can do that, is the most efficient way, and it really makes a huge difference. And then the absolute most important thing that you can control is that irrigation clock, making sure that it's working, and making sure that you've got adequate minutes, adequate number of days. And I have some magnets with the rule. We have an irrigation rule in Florida: 2 days a week in the summer, 1 day a week in the winter. You're not meant to water more than an hour per zone. You should never need to water more than an hour per zone. And that's all based off research about what turfgrass actually needs. Usually 20 to 25 minutes for a spray zone, 40 minutes for a rotor zone are common application amounts, and I'll get to that. So again, look at your yard. When I moved into my house, I had a horrible irrigation system, way too much turfgrass and really high bills. So slowly but surely, because it's really expensive to do it all at once, we started changing and moving heads, reducing our turfgrass, adding more plants and mulch, and adding drip tubing. And turning off the system, actually. We only turn it on when we've had significant dry weather. And that's become a really popular, and the utilities aren't going to like it when I make these suggestions, because you can really bring down your bill if you turn off your irrigation system. And basically, you just turn it on as needed on your appropriate watering days, please. The other thing is making sure, you know that rain sensor, that's the white thing on the side of your house? In my case, it was hanging off my eaves and just kind of swinging in the wind. They really do work. Rain sensors will shut off the system if it's been raining. So if you don't want to deal with turning it on and off, make sure your rain sensor is functioning. We have a law in Florida, actually, that if an irrigation contractor does work on your system, he has to check the rain sensor. If it is not functioning, he has to, by law, fix it and bill you for it. It should be $50 maybe, before he can do any other work on your system. So again, you're familiar with the spray heads. They're usually for a small area. They are the most inefficient heads, actually. They often have leaks, but they really work best in a small area that you have to cover for turf or maybe your bed. You've probably noticed there's markings usually on the top of them. This 10 is how far the water throws. So it's 10 feet. It might say 8, it might say 6. It's how far that water throws. The H is half, meaning that it's throwing in a half circle. So it's 10 feet in a half circle. That's also what these etchings mean. That's the half circle. If this was a quarter spray where it's just a corner area, it would say 10Q, and you'd only see half those etchings. So that's just a tip on how to read the spray heads. The rotors are the ones that go back and forth. They're usually for large areas. They put out water much more slowly than spray heads. So absolute number one tip, you should never have sprays and rotors in the same zone. Sprays are spraying continuously, rotors are slowly going back and forth. So they should never, and in Volusia, if your system was designed right, you should never see that. I won't go into a whole lot of detail about the pressure or whatever. Rotors are great for large areas. You'll probably have spray heads in smaller areas. There's a new one, relatively new, called a rotary nozzle, or an MPR. It is kind of like a hybrid of the two. These heads are 30% more efficient because they put water out much more slowly and they're pressure regulated. So because I had a really crummy irrigation system, and it's really hard to change location of heads more than a couple of feet, I changed all my heads to MP rotors. So the water is being put out there much more slowly. It's what they say, it's matched. It's putting it out on with pressure regulation, so it's not... have you seen heads that are spraying and the water is evaporating off? That won't happen with these heads. They're larger droplets of water. They're real pretty, actually, the spray pattern. So all of the research is showing approximately 30% less water. Rainbird, Toro, Hunter, they all make MPRs, or rotary nozzles. The one thing you have to remember to do, which I didn't and almost killed my grass, was they take much longer to irrigate. So if you've had sprays, traditional spray heads, and you put these in, you've got to increase your run time because it's putting the water out slower, but it's using less water. So the most common mistakes that we see, and this is also based on research from the university where they did audits on homes, is irrigation zones with turf and beds on the same zone. Every one in my house was like this with the system. We didn't have a code in St. Johns County when I moved there, so it was the cheapest possible system installed. You should not be seeing this in Volusia County because you have a very good irrigation code. Head-to-head spacing. And again, your code says you should have what they call head-to-head spacing. You have two spray heads, say they're 10 feet apart, they should have a 10 on it. Sometimes to cut corners, contractors will stretch out the distance between heads. So they'll have maybe 8-foot sprays that are 12 feet apart. Water from one head is meant to touch the next head or within a foot of it. So one thing you can check for your system, turn it on, the water from each head should be spraying all the way to the next head. If you have a turf area where you've got dry, crunchy grass in one area and dollarweed in another, I bet you don't have head-to-head spacing. So that's where I mentioned getting that water out evenly to the turf grass. This is how you do it. Match precipitation, that means that those rotors, actually I'm going to have to go back and show you this picture. In the center of a rotor is the nozzle, and the orifice, the little hole the water comes out. With rotors, the guy who installs it is meant to put the right size nozzle in there. So it will determine whether you're spraying a full circle, a quarter, or a half. If they don't do that, you've got an area putting out way too much in one area, much less water in another. So that is something they cut corners on sometimes. They don't change out the nozzle in the rotors. And that causes it to be not matched. Oops. And then again, the runtime is incorrect for what the plant needs. Plants in Florida, if you've put in the right species, they're extremely drought tolerant, but you have to train them to be. If you overwater your turf grass, roots will be very shallow. So the longer you stretch it, the deeper the roots will get, and the longer your grass can go between waterings. So it really is better for the turf grass to water less. So again, never have rotors and sprays in the same yard, and make sure to water your turf and your non-turf separately. Should be like that, but sometimes houses slip through and they don't get inspected. This is the head-to-head spacing. For instance, they should, if it's a square, they should all be the same length apart. Water should go from one to the other. If you do not have head-to-head spacing, this is what you're getting. Overwatering here, underwatering here. And that is where you could end up putting out 3 inches of water here and a half an inch here. Turf looks really bad, and you're spending an awful lot on water, a ridiculous amount. Micro irrigation in beds. Do you guys have micro, or do you have sprays in your beds? Do you have this drip tubing? Okay. I think in Volusia, your beds are supposed to have this. Underneath the turf grass, there should be this tubing. It should at least be on a separate zone with sprays. Sometimes the trees have a thing like this called a bubbler. Your tree, if it's been in more than 1 or 2 years, should be well established. If there's a screw on it, you can screw that closed and turn it off. Your tree doesn't need to be watered. It's probably getting enough from the landscaping around it, and these can use a lot of water, these bubblers. So these micro irrigation devices, and we have several pages on our website to explain how to use them, these use significantly less water. They basically drip water by the root ball of the plant. There's no spraying, nothing like that. They use a lot less water. You can buy a kit to convert a zone to drip and do it yourself. I'm working with Joe Seward's at the Extension to do a homeowner class in micro irrigation so that he can teach homeowners how to install it. So look for that. Rainbird is going to help us develop a homeowner class. Other efficiency measures, making sure that your heads are tall enough, especially if St. Augustine, it should be a 6-inch head. Again, another way they cut corners is to put in a 4-inch head, and it doesn't get across up above the St. Augustine, and you're not watering your grass well. Make sure that you're not watering the sidewalk and the streets or the mulch. You know, no matter how often you water cypress mulch, a cypress tree is not going to grow there, so you don't need to be watering any impervious or mulched areas. Fix any leaks as soon as you see them. So that means you need to run your system during the day. Do a test on it every few months to make sure you don't have leaks, because you probably are sleeping when it runs. And it's not unusual. With my older system, I didn't realize it until I tested it, but I had a zone that was running, wasn't turning off. The inside the zone valve, there's a ring that sometimes gets stuck and it doesn't turn off. So it was moving on to the next zone, but the previous zone was running. So that's a really good reason to test your system. Make sure you have that rainfall shut off, the rain sensor, like I said, and make sure it works, not hanging from the eaves. And then turn it off maybe. And there's no reason your irrigation system should be on this summer. Since, what was it, May 22nd? Someone flipped the switch and the rain came. I turned mine off and I haven't watered since May. So, let's see. Again, the rule, I have magnets there that you can put on your fridge, but we do have a rule in Florida about when you can irrigate. It is 2 days a week. Depending on your address, the last digit of your address determines which days. So if it's an even numbered address, you water Thursdays and Sundays, or during Easter Standard Time, Sundays only. And in the winter, you probably can turn it off, especially November, January, February. Oftentimes your grass goes dormant. You can water it all day. It's not going to do anything. It is dormant. So there is no need to water it. Odd-numbered addresses then are Wednesdays and Saturdays. Again, no more than 3/4 of an inch per zone. And that's based on research for St. Augustine grass by the University of Florida. How you determine if you're putting out the 3/4 of an inch is the tuna can method. In your turf area, put out several tuna cans, run it for a whole cycle, and see how much water you have in it. Any more, and you're probably overwatering. Every system is different, so on average, for sprays, the ones that go out consistent watering, 20-25 minutes. Rotors that go back and forth, probably 45 minutes. But you can test it using the tuna can method. Again, no watering. Nobody should be watering between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. because a lot of it just evaporates, and in very hot weather it can scorch the plants. It's better to water early morning. They say if you water before midnight, late at night, you can bring on fungus issues with your turf grass, so early morning is the best. And again, no more than 1 hour per zone. There are exemptions. If you use micro-irrigation, you do not have to abide by the irrigation rules, because we're trying to encourage people to use micro. We'd like to think you won't be watering every day, but you don't need to abide by these rules. Also, for a new landscape, for the first 30 days of new turf, you can water every day. The second 30 days, every other day, to help you establish your turf grass. This is a great time of year to put in new turf grass, because it's raining so much. There's an exemption for hand watering. Reclaimed water, if you have purple pipe, you're exempt. However, nobody should be watering between 10 and 4, and you really don't need to water more than 2 days a week, or at all when we're having weather like this. And all of that information is also over there on the magnet. Indoor is pretty easy, actually. Outdoor, the average system, if you convert your landscape from a typical high water using one, you can cut your water use in half quite often. Now, I don't know about your systems, but it is possible to significantly reduce outdoor water use by doing all the things I mentioned. Indoors, probably without extreme behavior change, 20% water savings is typical. So again, leaks. Checking for leaks, use the meter checking method, and think about changing out to efficient fixtures like toilets, faucets, showers, and appliances, and then behavior change. Efficient hot water distribution is hard to do once you have your house built. It's more for new builders. So the EPA WaterSense program has been around now for 10 years, and it puts labels on indoor plumbing fixtures that are efficient. So Lowe's, Home Depot all carry WaterSense. Same price, does not cost any more. So if you're in the market for a toilet, make sure it's a WaterSense toilet. Florida Building Code says a toilet should flush 1.6 gallons. WaterSense toilet will be 1.28 or lower. So a cheaper option, and I did this in one of my bathrooms, is there's a $20 kit you can buy at Lowe's or Home Depot that is a dual flush kit. And you take off the handle of your toilet, you put this thing in, and you suddenly have a fancy dual flush toilet. It only allows half the tank to be flushed for liquids and a full tank for solids. So for $20, it looks like you have a new toilet and you're using significantly less water. There's another toilet in the market called the Niagara Stealth toilet. It's now recently in Lowe's and Home Depot, and it uses 0.8 of a gallon per flush. And it works. It really does work. I know builders who've been using it for years. We have a cost share program, and the utility in Gainesville is paying the apartment complex owners to retrofit and use these toilets. So they're going from 3-gallon toilets to 0.8 of a gallon. So they love it. Their bills are going down significantly. Remember, the toilet is the #1 area. Faucets, you can buy a WaterSense faucet, or you can just replace the nozzle. And I brought, probably there's 1 or 2 for everyone. So on your way out, get a flow nozzle. These are the water efficient kind. And if you're able to unscrew yours and put one of these in. An even easier way is underneath the sink, you have a valve. Just turn it down to a flow that's still acceptable. And you don't have to buy a new faucet. You don't have to change anything. Just adjust your faucet down underneath by turning the handle. Don't do that with your toilet because it won't work right. But it works with faucets. Showers, 2.2 gallons per minute is Florida Building Code. Do you have hard water here? Do you get clogged? Well, yours is probably operating a lot less by now. But you can buy a new shower head, WaterSense. It's tough with shower heads. The lowest they label them at is 2 gallons per minute, because they want it so that especially women with thick hair can rinse conditioner out of their hair. That's how they base their testing. And they really couldn't reduce the water use that much and it be effective. People like their showers. But you can, find other ways to. Now, you could get a low-flow shower head. The super low-flow, 1 gallon per minute. So indoors, there are some cheap and free things you can do, but behavior change, not flushing the toilet as a garbage can, all of that are good ways to reduce your water use. I mentioned the toilets, the 1.28 gallons per flush. Do not put anything in the tank. Toilets are actually engineered to flush solids based on a certain size and shape of the bowl. If you put a brick or anything else in here, you will not be able to flush adequately. The new toilets, the 1.28 gallon toilets, are designed, and they spend thousands of dollars with engineers designing them to get all the solids down with less water. There is a list. How they do that, they actually measure it. It's grams per flush, and I'll let you use your own imagination. But if you are looking for a toilet, a WaterSense toilet has to be 1.28 and 350 grams per flush. That's not very high, I'll be honest. If you're looking at buying one, you can ask what are the grams per flush. It's called the MAP rating, MAP, maximum performance. Buy in the 600 to 700 grams per flush. You may as well, if you're buying a new one, you may as well get the highest performing toilet you can. Appliances, this is what you look for. Back in 2011, Energy Star added water to their labeling. It used to be that Energy Star just saved energy. Now they have much lower water consumption. You might have noticed with your clothes washer, things are coming out and they're still dry and stuff in some cases. So you can feel free to buy Energy Star dishwashers, clothes washers, and they will use at least 20% less water. Hot water distribution, there's not a whole lot you can do once you've built your house. We encourage builders who are in the process of building to put in these manifold plumbing systems. Instead of having one hot water circulation pipe, so that if you're, the way your shower that's furthest from the water heater, you've got to wait and wait and wait for the hot water to come. These actually have a dedicated hot water line going to every source. So it gets there really fast. But you can only do that while you're building. You can put in a pump system called Demand. It's a brand name that will get water from the hot water tank to your end source really quickly. You just press a button. There's also these recirculation. They use a lot of energy, though, so I would think twice about it. And again, the WaterStar website, floridawaterstar.com, has a technical manual and tons of resources about all of these water conservation approaches. We wrote the technical manual so that it easily, you can print it out page by page. There's a toilet page, a urinal page, sink page, and all of the information that I've mentioned tonight is pretty much on that page. I don't need to talk about this because I think you went into great detail on billing. This is my utility. So what I like to do, because I work in the conservation business and I'm curious, I take my monthly gallon amount and I divide it by the number of days in the cycle and the number of people in my house, and I like calculating the gallons per person per day. That's something that we calculate a lot for our planning purposes. On average, it used to be back in the early 2000s, we were up at 150 gallons per person per day because of irrigation systems. We've brought it down a lot. We're more like 100 now. So as a challenge for your family, see how many gallons per person per day. The lowest I can get ours to without irrigation is about 33 gallons per person per day. But you can imagine living with me, like it's like, don't flush the toilet and turn off the water, and my kids are just neurotic because their mother's in water conservation. So I think that's all I have. Do you have any questions about irrigation, landscaping, or indoor water use that I can answer? Okay. Yeah, it is best to irrigate your yard early in the morning from 2 a.m. on rather than late at night, because if damp grass sits there, mold and fungus can grow in your turf grass. Then you've got to add chemicals. So you're welcome. Any other questions? I will put my cards out. You can call me anytime. If I don't know the answer, I'll find someone. And look out for Volusia County offering micro-irrigation homeowner classes. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, so we have some of the cards here. I'm going to try to answer. I'm going to obviously read the questions. We were trying to do this so that way everybody could hear the questions that are being asked, because you may have the same questions. So one of them is, after how many days of non-payment does someone's water get cut off? So basically, again, going back to the slides, you have 20 days to pay your bill initially. We send you the delinquent notice, and then we're going to send you, we send you the delinquent notice, and then we're going to apply the non-payment fee, which is currently $62. And that's roughly, in the example I gave you, it was roughly 14 days after your due date. So you've had 34 days since the bill in this example was printed, 20 days to pay it before any fees go on. But at the point of disconnection, where we apply that non-payment fee at the close of business, in this case it was roughly 14 days. What I wanted to expand on that scenario is, so in that scenario, the non-payment was applied on July 17th. Your next bill was actually printed on July 13th and would be due on August 2nd. So you can see there's not even a whole lot of time to expand this out between, right now it's the non-pay is on the 17th of July. Your next bill is going to be due on August 2nd. So if it goes any further, you're really going to be having kind of two payments back to back. That's why the schedule is set up. Again, we have the entire schedule for the whole year set up ahead of time, but that is the difference of the time frames. So again, you have the late fee, which is applied on the day that you are due. So that way, basically, on the 20th day at close of business, that's when that late fee of $4.01.5% is going on. Okay? If you pay that, we're obviously not going to charge the non-payment fee if you can get your balance down below $30. That is another item that we have recently implemented. If you call us and you have your bill due and you say, hey, my bill is $80, I really don't have that amount to pay, my due date is such and such, if you pay your past due balance down below $30, you're going to avoid that non-payment fee. Okay? This is not for one customer. This is for all customers. Okay, so that's another resource. If you say, hey, I may have the $50 or $51 right now, and I know that I get paid, 2 days after my bill is actually scheduled for non-payment in that disconnection, that's another avenue that you have. We have agencies that we often refer customers to as well to help, hopefully, before they're at the point of getting that non-payment fee and being disconnected. Another thing that we offer that I did not mention earlier is, in the event that you are disconnected and that non-payment fee is on there, to be reconnected, the next question is, what does it take to be reconnected? So you do have to pay, in most cases, that non-payment fee plus your past due balance. We don't require you to pay the current bill. Again, so at this point, your new bill is due on August 2nd. We don't require payment of that, but you do have to pay the non-payment fee of $62 plus the past due balance, and it has to be paid by 3:30 to be reconnected that same day. If you pay after 3:30, there is an after-hours charge if you want somebody to come out that evening. We do have an option for every account that we allow you to roll that non-payment fee over to your next bill. So if I have the non-payment fee applied, I really don't have the resources at the moment to pay that non-payment plus my past due. I can pay that past due and roll the $62 over to my next bill, which is, again, due on August 2nd in this particular scenario. So it does give you a little bit of extra time. It restores your services and things like that. But that is what we have available for that. So someone was asking about the sewer usage, how it's measured, and how come there's no readings on the bill. So your sewer usage is measured based off of your water usage. And that's why there is no usage shown on the bill for those two lines, because the water that goes through the meter, that is what your sewer bill is generated off of. There's not a separate line. There's not a separate meter. The sewer, in layman's terms, is basically everything that is leaving your house, coming back out to the street, and coming to our plant for us to treat. So that's why you don't see an actual usage amount on your sewer, because it's technically the same as your water, because it's measured off of your water meter. They're asking, why is there only one leak forgiveness in a year? That's simply a policy thing that we have right now. That's something, if we need to approach that topic, that's something that we can approach. But right now, currently, that is what we have approved to be able to offer our citizens, just like it's, once every 12 months. There's nothing saying that we can't look for different approvals or look for different avenues if we need to improve things or change things. But that's our current policy, so that's what we have. Another question was about, do we have any plans for automatic meter readings? So as of right now, as I mentioned, we don't have any auto reads in the city. It is a very costly venture to go out and have them installed. Some places, there used to be some grants available and things like that. Right now, we don't have anything in the plans specifically saying that we're going to change to automatic meter reads. It's not saying we couldn't necessarily look at it as a city, but again, it's a costly venture, and it's something that we as a city would have to look into and want to do. Sorry, this one's a little bit longer. This one's talking about pool fills and stuff. I kind of covered that with, if you're a sewer customer, we have the ability to do one pool fill adjustment on your sewer usage in a 12-month period. There's really nothing in place for when you just have to top it off. Again, generally that's not as much as having to refill a full pool. On sewer, like many utilities, again, we have our cap at 10,000 gallons. There's no way for us to sit and find out how much of your water is washing your car and things like that. So unfortunately, because it's all based on the water meter, that is what your sewer is based off of with that cap. This is talking about water meters rolling forwards and backwards, and the triangle moving both forwards and backwards as well. So basically, a water meter is still a mechanical device. It's just like anything else. It can wear out over time and things like that. It's I would say it's more uncommon for it to move forward and backwards versus just actually stop working altogether and being stuck. I'll get with you in...
The question was, when it rolls forward, and it takes forward, it charges you. When it rolls backwards, is it crediting you?
Okay, so if a dial, normally when dials roll forwards and backwards, they're not making full rotations forwards. They're more of what I would describe as a rocking, because they're not always rolling all the way forwards. If something was to roll all the way forward, it's usually, I would say it's multiple dials going at once, and at that point the meter is basically, in most cases, about to be stuck. But generally, there could be cases where it's rolling or rocking back and forward, but yes, it rocks forwards and... Okay, well, the triangle is... Okay. Okay. The triangle or the needle? Because I'm talking about actually the register. So the triangle is a flow. I mean, that's going to be based on different pressures and things like that. So you could have, and hopefully it's not always taking place, but that's also why there's backflows, because if your pressure is going back and forth, that's what's going to cause that to go both ways. So the triangle is not what is going to change your reading as much as if the dials or the needle itself is going, because again, the needle has to go a full 10 gallons before that register actually changes. I thought you were referring to the register rocking, which again is...
I was actually doing this for like an hour and a half. I watched it. Mm-hmm. I'm a state licensed plumbing contractor. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering, does, again, my question is, when that thing rolls forward and it charges you, and then it rolls backwards, does it credit you?
Okay, again, the triangle moving is not creating that charge, because that triangle is not going to cause the register to fully move. A full 10 gallons has to go through in order for that to actually, for it to increase and to get an additional charge. So the triangle may go back and forth, and I'm sure that with the manufacturer there's some level of variance that is authorized, but the triangle is not necessarily going to cause your reading to go. It would take for the actual register, like we said on the odometer of the car, to move to be able to increase your bill.
Do you guys have any plans to put dual Teflon seated check valves on it? I'll take over.
Okay. He's going to be able to answer more of the technical questions for you as far as the equipment and that stuff. I'm going to go ahead and finish with these other questions, and I'm going to pass the mic to Matt. So what is considered a high read, and when will it alert the meter reader? So high read is different for every customer. Again, I could be a 3,000 gallon customer and you could be a 10,000 gallon customer. So we're going to look at my usage for, say, the past year. And if I go up to 10,000 gallons, that may be considered a high read. We have certain criteria that we look at, I should say the billing staff looks at, to make that determination. With the meter readers, it's a little bit harder for them. They're not normally the ones that are going to leave you the door tag when they're out there reading your meter for the first time. It's generally going to be after it comes back to the office and we're actually going out for your reread. Because the meter readers, they're not given the previous read, so they have to actually go through a million other steps to even get an average reading, which they don't tend to do. That's why they leave it up to the office. We review the consumption, and when we go out for that reread, that's when we're leaving the door tag, because we can indicate if we've seen a leak or if the meter's still turning. Like I said, when they go out to read, if they're reading at 7 o'clock in the morning, you may be home, taking your shower, brushing your teeth, so your meter may be turning. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a leak. But when we go out at 10 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon, and if your meter's turning, and then at that point we know how much water has gone through because we have that reading, we have the reading from last month because this is a separate technician going out, we can make that determination, oh, well, the meter's turning and they've used 50,000 gallons where I see they're normally at 5,000 gallons. I'm going to go ahead and leave a door hanger. Okay, so it's when we get the additional information that the meter reader doesn't initially have, when we go out for that reread, that's when we can generally do the door hanger.
Okay, we have a few more questions to finish up, and then I think we'll have a little bit of time for some additional questions not written. Does anyone have a blue card for St. John's? Okay. You did such a great job. There's no questions. So I've got a couple more here about moving from an old house to a new house and not applying that, and the new house being more efficient, which makes sense. You have better appliances and whatnot, but that's where Crystal talked about it's all individual use, individual people. You can be in a new place and have a garden tub versus an older tub where you may have efficient tubs in certain rooms. You could have a leak. I mean, even a brand new house, we talked about brand new irrigation systems tend to have a leak at least one place. There can be leaks other places. That's why it's very important to do these leak checks and whatnot. And it comes down to also just behaviors and working with your family. If it is something that you have a high bill, high usage, again, the high bill kind of triggers you, but you have to look at that usage because sometimes it's only 1,000 gallons is that upper tier. Once you cross over 20,000, that represents 3,000 gallons on the lower tier. Talking about irrigation systems versus water and sewer, we encourage folks to get a separate irrigation meter to separate that water so it's not counted for the sewer. As Crystal mentioned, there are sewer caps. There are many people that even with the irrigation meter exceed the cap. And they ask, why is my bill the same for my sewer even though I added this meter? Well, you were using 11,000 or 13,000 before the irrigation, and now you're still using it after. It's just you were using 30,000 with the irrigation, and now you have 11,000 and 17,000 or 19. There are issues with a few neighborhoods that have larger yards and have a lot more zones, and it's very important to do the methodology that Crystal and Deidre were talking about, looking at inspecting your facilities and making sure you can control your usage by the time. The kind of average numbers Deidre mentioned, the 20 to 25 minutes and the 40 to 45 minutes is pretty standard. But if you go to your house and do that check, you can calculate your bill. And if you have 6, 7, 8 zones, or you have some places have 20 heads in a zone, which is not what should be built, you're going to have a lot of usage, but you can calculate what that is and bring your usage down. Had a few more questions, a little off topic. I just want to kind of address in general so that people know that we read their question and we didn't not read it, about water rates, about projects and what impacts those rates. That will be a workshop we'll definitely do in the future. If you've been watching our workshops and commission meetings, they've come up. The basic is we have Blue Spring, both water quality and water quantity, that's driving a lot of it. We're working with St. John's as a partner to see if we can reduce some of the projects that have been developed on that, but that topic in specificity will be at a later date. Talking about the city with developers installing different efficient appliances. There's no code that I'm aware of that we're modifying at this time, but that's something, along with some of the other policy items that Crystal mentioned, that we can review. And that's all we have for the questions that were pre-recorded. Let's see what time it is here. We've got about 10 minutes, so I'm going to come with the mic, and then we'll just, that way we can hear your question, okay?
Who came up with the $62 non-payment fee? Was it done as a study or something? Because I've researched some of our surrounding cities, and some people that live on a fixed income, it makes it almost impossible for them to keep up with their bills.
Yeah, the $62 fee is something that was done in a recent rate study. I think it was 2013. And we do a rate review every single year. Not necessarily a full rate study. That was during a full rate study, and it actually looked at our processes and who goes out and what costs would be incurred. So it was actually calculated by that consultant. The previous lower rate of $40 that the system had for many, many years, there wasn't a backing of that. What I can say regarding rates just in general is there's been some discussion with the commission to review those and look at that fee, look at the tier structure. So that's something, as I said, that will be another meeting for detail, but that's something that the commission is looking at. Anyone else with a question? Well, I thank you for coming. I hope it was informative. We do plan on having this running on Deltona TV, so you'll be able to catch it. We will be putting these presentations up on the website, hopefully by Friday. The plan is to put it on the Deltona subpage on our website, and so we'll get it there. Likely, public relations folks will put it on social media with a link to where it's at. So, again, thank you for coming.